So my hot take of the year is that this racket, the EZONE 100, is the 100 square inch racket to beat for 2025. I don't think that I've ever tested such a well-rounded frame in the 100 square inch class, with this EZONE absolutely nailing two of the most important ratios on the market: power to control and stability to maneuverability. As you can see, I have made another graph. This time we're going to be doing power and control and comparing a bunch of blue rackets, because blue rackets are all power frame. The worst performer is obviously the Boom MP. It's got the thinnest beam of all the power frames and kind of the weirdest string spacing. The most powerful is Kyle's racket, the FX 500. Huge power, really thick beam, but the control isn't the best because it's got this kind of trampolining grommet system, which is a bit too kabungy for me. Then we've got the two kings, the Babolat Pure Dad and the EZONE 100. I think the Pure Dad actually offers better control because the playability is more consistent across the hitting surface, but I think power is actually a little better with this new EZONE. That newly thickened beam gives you a little extra zhuzh, and especially since that sweet spot is moved up in the frame up towards that 12 o'clock location, you're gonna get a little more leverage on the ball. And here we've got my infamous maneuverability to stability graph, with the Boom MP kind of looking bad. Again, winning maneuverability but losing stability simply because it's an overall lighter frame. We've got Kyle's racket, kind of the most stable, least maneuverable. That's the FX 500. Kind of chunky with all that weight at 3 and 9, giving it probably the best in class torsional stability, but losing out on some maneuverability. And then the Pure Dad being your classic middle of the road, does everything, pretty stable, pretty maneuverable, doesn't necessarily lean one way or the other, but with the new tech, the thicker beam in the EZONE 100, not gaining any weight, still being faster, probably being the most spin-friendly of the bunch, but also maybe being the most stable. Pretty hard to beat. Even though you would think on paper the EZONE plays just like a Pure Drive, to me it sits more in between like the Aero 100 and the VCORE 100. You get this great torsional stability and control off the string bed that you find with the Aero 100, but you get this amazing ball pocketing and spin modulation that you can find in the VCORE 100. And then even though those two rackets, the VCORE and the Aero, seem to be competitors from a marketing perspective, I actually experienced kind of inverse strengths and weaknesses from them. My two big issues with the Aero 100 are the two main strengths of the VCORE. With the Aero, I didn't think maneuverability was that great, and I really struggled to modulate my spin, with the feel being so muted that I just couldn't understand what was going on the string bed. With the VCORE 100, on the other hand, I thought the string bed was too open, creating poor control on flat shots and pretty bad torsional stability considering it's a 100 square inch thick beam frame. On the other hand, I love the torsional stability of the Aero 100, and I think the control is some of the best, with that new tighter pattern being one of the best things to happen to that racket since they got rid of that tight pattern. And then on the VCORE, I love that ball pocketing. There's so much dwell time. You can feel what's going on the string bed, keep your contact point well informed, and the whippy feel made it really easy to control your spin. The EZONE 100 steps in and combines the best of these two rackets without succumbing to their weaknesses. You get a nearly perfectly balanced string pattern which facilitates spin without sacrificing predictability, assuming you use the right string setup. That is something that we're going to discuss later on in the video. And the weight distribution and beam design also keep this racket absolutely rock solid on off-center shots against even the biggest hitters, even in stock form, while somehow ensuring that this frame is maneuverable enough for sufficient spin modulation. So what's new with this racket, and how has Yonex improved the EZONE 100 so much? As per usual, Yonex's update here includes a few minor tweaks to the actual mold of the frame, which is more than just a lazy addition of tech, but also less than a complete overhaul of the line. They've thickened the tip right here by almost a full millimeter and thickened the cross section of the throat by about half a mil. This leads to more stability and energy return in the upper hoop, but also reduces some torsional flexing towards the shaft of the frame. Interestingly, the frame has also theoretically been softened in the throat with the addition of Minilon, which is moth larvae silk developed by the developed by the Japanese pharmaceutical company called Kawa in conjunction with the National Agriculture and Food Research Organization. This material, this Minilon, was designed specifically to be used in carbon fiber layups, all the way from sports applications to the automotive industry as kind of like an eco option, because apparently the enslavement of several million bagworms doesn't produce any CO2, which is nice to hear, but I don't know if I have any actual strong opinions about it. What I do have a strong opinion about is that I think it does lead to a softer and overall more comfortable feel compared to the 2022 EZONE, which as a package was a little bit stiff and pretty crisp. Despite the 1 point higher stiffness rating on the new EZONE, I feel pretty confident recommending this as a comfort option moving forward, which is a really nice change from the 2022 model, which developed a bit of a mixed reputation. I think overall here we're seeing a little more power, a little more stability, slightly better access to spin than the previous version, though control and feel won't be quite as dialed in from a player's racket perspective if you're used to kind of this boardy, responsive feel. Power and stability are about as good as it gets in the 100 square inch segment. You get this edge to edge sweet spot that we've become so used to from this line of rackets, matching or exceeding the off-center performance from key competitors like the Pure Drive, like the Dunlop FX500, and definitely exceeding rackets like the Boom MP and the VCORE 100. In typical Yonex fashion, I experienced the most power and the most stability towards the upper hoop of the frame, which I prefer because I tend to hit it kind of in this upper third of the string bed. I got the most benefit from this improved power and stability up at net. I think punching volleys were really nice with this frame, but I also saw some benefits to the back of the court in defensive situations like blocking returns or redirecting pace against big hitters. It's really nice on aggressive shots too, like my flatter forehand cross court was absolute money with a customized setup, though in stock form there were definitely times where I was missing a little bit of plow. Thankfully, this is really easily fixed with some weight in the tip, and I'll share more about my methods of customization on this frame later in the video. With the stock setup, I was able to find pretty solid court penetration from both forehand and backhand. A little better on the forehand because I can swing that side a little bit faster, take advantage of the better maneuverability of like a 300-gram stick. On the backhand, I do like a little bit of extra weight, but on serves, I really enjoyed how much power there is on those first serves. If you serve flat, big tees, I think this is an absolutely great stick. Now, control and feel is an area where I think the EZONE 100 always has kind of excelled compared to the competition. The 2022 model was relatively raw while also being quite solid, in contrast to like the Boom and Extreme MPs, which are kind of raw but pretty hollow, or the Babolat frames, which are kind of muted although still solid feeling. This kind of gives you both of what you want, solid and connected. And while I have become pretty accustomed to just adapting my game to different feeling frames, I really appreciate when manufacturers can find that right balance between nice ball pocketing and good consistency in the string bed. Like, we're seeing a lot of soft frames that have this great outstanding ball pocketing, like the Wilson Clash, the Prestige MPL, or the Gravity MP, the Prince Phantoms. They offer this massive dwell time, so much feel through the string bed, but to achieve that, there's all this hoop flex, which results in some inconsistencies, in my opinion, in terms of your launch angle or just like poor stability off center. Two things I really don't like. The EZONE lets you feel the ball come in and out of the string bed. It holds it there. It gives you that kind of nice ball cupping sensation before just launching it out with really epic power and spin. But to me, the thing that's most important about all of that is it does so consistently. The racket makes sure you know exactly what to expect from the launch of your EZONE, so you can just stay on the gas all day long. I never felt like I had to reduce reduce my racket head speed to keep the ball in, which is funny because that's what I'm looking for out of a control frame, but we're seeing that feature here in like a power racket, which is not something I can say for even like the Pure Drive 100, the Dunlop FX 500, or the Boom MP. Overall, I do think that the hitting feel is more muted than last year. I suspect this is from the Minilon, but the ball pocketing is such that you can still feel where you hit the ball on the string bed. And while I can't say that I like this kind of muted, bouncy feel, I can appreciate how solid the racket feels ultimately, and I do prefer it to a lot of other options. I will say in terms of like pure hitting feel, it does fall behind my Aero Racquet because I like that raw, completely undampened feel, but I suspect more players will probably prefer the comfort and dwell time you get out of this new EZONE. Spin is probably the area where this racket most surprised me, especially after hitting with the EZONE 98, a racket which I really struggled with due to not finding that spin potential. And I rewatched my old EZONE 100 review, which is funny because now TennCom is like old enough that I've got reviews for multiple generations of rackets. And I noticed that I did have issues finding spin on my forehand side in that old review. But I think things have changed a little bit for me because in the last year, I've hit the 2022 EZONE 100 a few times, and as of recently, I'm just not having the spin production issue on my forehand. I personally think this is from technical improvements on my forehand side, and thankfully that means I'm also getting absolutely fantastic access to spin on this EZONE. I think I get more spin here than the Pure Drive, more spin than the FX 500, and about the same that I got with the Boom MP. While this racket's not like a complete spin monster like my personal frame, the Racquet or the VCORE 100, I suspect it's going to be sufficient for the vast majority of players. The spin here is really strong in the two areas that I look for, both in pure spin potential, but also when it comes to spin modulation. For example, if you just go after going for like a normal topspin forehand, I was rewarded with all the spin I needed, and I didn't have to look extra hard or try hard to find the spin like I did with the Strike 98, the First Up 100D, or Technofiber's TFX1 line. I was also really easily able to modulate my spin, meaning on flat shots, I could flatten out my technique and hit a flat ball. And that's something that I did struggle with, or I do continue to struggle with my Pure Aero Racquet or the VCORE 98. But if I wanted to go for something a little bit of a spin shot, buy myself extra time, or find that angle on a passing shot, I was really able to do that with this frame still, something again that I struggled with like the Pure Drive or the EZONE 98. So I think when it comes to spin, this is like a really, really happy medium across the board. When it comes to strings, I find myself definitely preferring something crisper, a little bit stiffer. The first string we chose was Restring Viva, which is pretty medium across the board. Nothing really stands out, but instantly I wanted more control and a crisper feel, so I went to Tennis Warehouse's P6, which is like their demo string, but it plays just like Hyper G, but in a silver color, and that was great. So I thought, okay, I think I could go even crisper and firmer still, so I tried Technofiber Razor Code, which stiffness-wise is in the same realm as RPM Blast, and that was my favorite setup. Even though it's a round string, I got plenty of spin with it. It didn't lose anything compared to the shaped P6. The control was outstanding. I thought the feel was better. I liked how it firmed up the string bed. Overall, I would say that was my favorite setup. I was stringing this about 5250 because Yonex recommends a split tension, so cross is a bit looser. I think that was a good range for me. I think you could probably go softer or lower in tension if you really want to open up that ball pocketing, but there's just so much generosity out of this string that I don't think you need to go softer, and the comfort's also really strong. I think if you know you like these softer, more muted strings, like your Polytour Pros, like your Hyper G Softs, like your Toraline strings, you might find this racket to be a bit kind of like bouncy and launchy, but if you have experience with those softer strings in 100 square inch frames, I think it should be pretty fine for you. Right now in this racket, we've got Pure Rush in the mains and a black version of Restring Sync in the crosses, and I think I still do prefer the Razor Code. The Pure Rush is just a little bit too powerful for what I'm liking in this racket. I think going forward, I'm definitely going to throw in like some Tour Sniper into this thing because I'm having a hard time putting this racket down. Now, when it comes to customization, this EZONE 100 plays incredibly well stocked. It has more than enough stability to handle any kind of ball that I personally experience, but when it comes to finding my own power, my own court penetration, I find that I play better with a slightly higher swing weight, closer to like 330, and thankfully this EZONE takes weight like an absolute champ. You retain great maneuverability, even beefing up the swing weight towards 330. I really like the playability with the leather grip on top of the weight at 12 to kind of lower that balance point, get a little more feel through the handle as well. So the specs that I ultimately ended up with and really played well with were 342 gram static weight, 32.2 centimeter balance point, and a 333 swing weight. Honestly, this EZONE could have played outstandingly with specs anywhere between stock and where I got it to. I imagine if you wanted to go even heavier, like with Murray taping like the entire hoop of his EZONE, it would still play pretty well, but I am trying to get away from going too heavy these days, trying to find a little bit more racket head speed. So my final thoughts. Overall, I think this might be like a 10 out of 10 racket. It's really hard for me to find like issues in terms of pure playability. Of course, there are imperfections and nitpicks that I can make. For example, the paint seems really thin, like it's showing scratches, blemishes really easily. Part of that might be because it's got this like metallic purple flake in the blue, but the paint just looks really thin, and it's something I noticed on the EZONE 98 as well. Speaking of paint, I don't think the paint job has grown on me at all since it came out. I'm looking forward to the potential release of like an alternate color, maybe Osaka, maybe like another version of Aqua Night. I also, another nitpick, the flare on Yonex's butt caps I think is not enough. I always find myself building them up a little bit to build that flare up. Again, personal preference kind of thing, but as a package, that's pretty much all the complaints I have on this frame. I don't see any major weaknesses, I just see a ton of strengths. Spin is good, power is good, stability is excellent, control is sufficient, comfort is absolutely there regardless of the string setup. Yeah, if you go for like a string that's too soft, I could see how you have control issues, but I don't think you need to go for a super soft string because the dampening is absolutely there and it doesn't take away that much from the feel, from the responsiveness of this racket. Going forward, this is definitely going to be one of my most recommended rackets on the entire market. I think it sits at the top of the heap with other industry leaders like the Pure Aero 98, the T-Fight 305S. This is, I think, just a home run from Yonex, and I'm really looking forward to see what they do with the VCOREs whenever those come out. If this racket helped you make your buying decision on this EZONE 98, I have links in the description below to Tennis Warehouse, Tennis Warehouse Only Australia, and Tennis Warehouse Europe. Purchases made through those links will directly support the creation of videos just like this